Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
Can't see your faces. Is it okay to unzip?
Why not? We're packed up in here. Say cheese, everybody.
Move in close now.
Welcome to the first episode on the other side of 300 of The Pint. My name is John.
My name is Lloyd.
And we're here to talk about a movie that nobody has ever fucking heard of.
Talk about forgotten movies.
Yeah, the Forgotten Cinema guys should have done this before they fucking closed doors.
Right.
So here on the Pint, we have our patrons, Pint Insiders, and the first Pint Insider was Johnny Amato, the candy man, as I like to call him, because he's always hooking us up with great candies.
Oh, man, he's got the best candy.
Yeah, he's got a candy hookup. I don't even want to look too far into it. There might be something illegal there, but John's a great guy. We see him all the time at Cult Classics. Larry and I did an episode when the Pint Insider first started for John, the Matt Damon film Over the Edge. So we're getting back around to John again on the main feed here. And John put a couple different movies up on his requests, and one of them was called Warning Sign. Okay, fine. From 1985. I started looking into this, and there's some pretty major stars in this thing, but like I think I'm pretty good at knowing movies, especially from that era. I had never heard of this, Lloyd.
And you had never heard of it. Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah. Larry had never heard of it because Larry was originally was going to do this episode with us, but his kids' little league team needed a substitute coach. Blah blah blah. Larry can't be here tonight, but Larry didn't know what this movie was.
What the last barrier would be Officer Mike, if he had ever heard of it.
Yeah, I didn't ask him. So when this episode comes out, I might have to message him. But so John pulled Warning Sign from 1985 out of his bunghole for us to talk about. And not only that, here's the crazy part. When I saw John at the last Larry's last Cult Classics event, because I had mentioned to him, hey, look, when we do this, where can we find this? Is it streaming? He brought me his copy of the Blu-ray. This movie was they made Blu-rays of this movie. I don't know. It seems very niche, but that's all good.
Before we get into it, were there any special featurettes or anything like that?
I didn't look. I watched the movie the other night. I've had a really long work week, so I had a good chance to watch it the other night. I think it's like an hour and a half or hour and 40 minutes.
Hour and 40 minutes.
So I had just enough time to bang it out before bed. But I still have it, so I might go in and double check. Yeah. But it looked pretty bare bones from the case. Where did you see this thing?
I was able to rent it from Amazon Prime.
Okay, so it's out there. It exists.
I had a nice little $3 credit for whatever reason. Sometimes you buy things and you say, "Oh yeah, I don't need it right away. Just send it whenever." And then you get a little digital credit. So.
Yeah. Yep, I've had the same thing. I've used that several times for the show as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I go to rent something and it reminds me and I'm like, fuck yes.
Yes.
Yes, I will rent Rollerball 2002 with that $4.
I sure will.
Thank you so much. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk all about Warning Sign.
Come on! Let's do this together!
All right. Well, this Warning Sign, I don't even understand the title, but, I guess we'll talk about that later.
Original, the original title?
I do. Yeah. Okay. It was originally called Biohazard, but audiences didn't react well to that, apparently. So it was released on August 23rd, 1985. directed by Hal Barwood. This was his only feature he ever directed. He did some shorts, and he went on afterwards to do some video games and stuff. But Hal Barwood, he had a partnership going, and I almost wonder if it was a loving relationship, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you
with
mean.
his partner, Matthew Robbins, because they were both tied to THX 1138, Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind as uncredited writers, both of them. The Sugarland Express, the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings.
Oh,
Richard
of course.
Pryor movie. MacArthur, Corvette Summer, and Dragon Slayer. These two guys both wrote all those movies that I just mentioned. This is the only thing, like I said, that Hal Barwood ever directed. After that, Matthew Robbins went on to have another partnership with Guillermo del Toro. Did a bunch of his movies, wrote a lot of screenplays. He also did Batteries Not Included, Mimic, the terrible Crimson Peak. I don't know. I hated that movie.
No, not a fan. I wanted to like it, and I understood what they were going for, but it just didn't work for me. It got like a gothic romance. I mean,
yeah. It did not work for me.
It looked cool, but it did not work for me. There are people that love that movie.
Yep.
I'm not in that. His movie right before that was Pacific Rim, which was fucking awesome.
Right, it was. And then Matthew Robbins also did last year's Pinocchio. Never saw that either.
Another Guillermo del Toro movie.
When I say last year, 2022.
So Robbins wrote this movie, right? Is what you're saying? Okay. Yeah. All right. Barwood directed it. Robbins wrote it. Or did they write it together? Or
they
no?
wrote it together. This was one of their partnerships, right in the middle, I would say. After that, I know it was filmed in July of 1984. And I know it was filmed in Payson, Utah. And about the only thing I could dig up from there was that was where the Latter-day Saints first settled in 1850. And then also recorded filmed in La Crescenta, California, which is a unincorporated area in Los Angeles County.
Yeah, because the movie takes place in Utah. I don't even remember if they mentioned it, but there's a poster on the wall, like it's a calendar, and it says Utah on it.
Right.
And then when I was reading as much research as I could on this movie, there's not a lot, like you said. It said set in Utah, so we'll just go with that.
And honest to God, that is all I could find. I did a lot of digging.
No, look, this is a movie that in either of our brains until like maybe 3 or 4 months ago when John asked for it, didn't fucking exist.
It didn't.
like John might have willed this movie into the world from his imagination.
Right. It was not in the cultural zeitgeist.
No, certainly not.
So tell us, John, who was in this thing?
Round up the usual suspects.
All right. So right off the bat, action star extraordinaire Sam Waterson as Cal Morse, the sheriff or deputy sheriff of this town. You know him from Law and Order 16 fucking seasons. And a movie we covered that I forgot he was in. He was the dad in Serial Mom.
Oh, that is right.
He has that really awkward sex scene where he's pumping Kathleen Turner in bed. Yeah.
Anyone should consider themselves lucky to do that.
Yeah, back in 1994, sure.
And now Kathleen Quinlan, jeez.
Yeah. Before I get to Quinlan, though, the New York Landmarks Conservatory actually also designates people of importance to New York State and City as living landmarks. And because of his role on Law and Order, and he's so synonymous with it, Sam Waterson is a living landmark of New York City, along with, and this is kind of funny because these people aren't alive anymore, but along with Joan Rivers and his partner from Law and Order for many years, Jerry Orbach. Those were 3 of the many people that have been designated living landmarks in New York. Very cool. Yeah.
I'm sure it was a fucking living landmark.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. I can't even get like all my sub stamps stamped at Subway. You know what I mean? To get a free sub. I never even get to that 12th fucking thing. But meanwhile, fucking this guy's a living landmark of New York City.
Have I told you my brush with greatness of Sam Waterston?
I don't remember.
You can probably guess where it was.
New York City?
Actually, no, it wasn't in New York. It was many, many years ago when I worked at a little place called Sam Goody in the mall.
You did tell me you met him there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he was in there, and I saw him, and I was like, "Can I help you?" Because it's Sam Waterston,
Right.
But he was just very cool, very, very just kept to himself. He's like, "Oh, thank you very much, but I'm all set." And I was like, "Okay." And I think he knew, he knew I knew who he was.
Yeah. Well, he's Sam Waterston.
I left him
he
alone.
knows.
Yeah.
He knows. He was just he felt it was a really good day because you weren't tearing his clothes off like he usually gets.
Exactly.
Yeah. As I was watching
a while ago. This was probably in the late 80s. So he was looking very young in this movie here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to say there were several scenes in this movie where as I'm watching him and looking at him, I'm thinking, man, if in like 1985 they did a Star Trek reboot and they needed a Spock, this is your fucking guy.
Yeah.
Like he has a very Leonard Nimoy kind of everyman quality.
Another actor from this movie had that sort of quality as well.
Okay, we'll get to him. All right. So playing his wife in this film, Joni Morse, who is in charge of the security at this biotech facility, is Kathleen Quinlan. We talked about her on episode 250, Event Horizon. We talked about her on the American Graffiti episode. She was also in The Doors. And she is the wife of Sam Waterston's character and basically a security guard that gets put into a very odd situation in this film.
Yeah, she was.
Yaphet Kotto, the great Yaphet Kotto, plays Major Connolly. You know him, of course, as Parker from Alien. We talked about back in February, Truck Turner. He was the bad guy, Harvard Blue in that. And on Lloyd's favorite TV show of all time, from 1993 to 2000, Homicide: Life on the Streets.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Of course, of course. Now, the next actor, it took me half the movie to realize who the fuck he was.
Oh, really?
Because I'm used to him being an old guy, and he's not an old guy in this. It's 1985. Jeffrey DeMunn plays Dr. Dan Fairchild. Jeffrey DeMunn is probably best known for being a Frank Darabont guy. He has been in a million productions of Frank Darabont. He has been in The Mist. He was on the first couple seasons of The Walking Dead as Dale. He was in The Blob in 1988, which is 3 years after this movie, but he looks considerably older than he does in this one, and that was written by Frank Darabont. Half the movie goes through, and all of a sudden his face and voice hit me, and I pick my phone up, and I go, it's Jeffrey fucking DeMunn. I was surprised. Lloyd, did you pick it up right away?
I saw his name ahead of time, so I did know that he was in it, and I didn't realize it was him right away because you first see him, he's laying half naked in bed, right?
Right.
And this guy's in good shape.
Yeah.
He's not a Jeffrey DeMunn that I know. He's like hot young Jeffrey DeMunn, I guess.
Well, okay, hot-ish, youngish Jeffrey DeMunn. Yeah,
youngish.
Yeah, don't give him too much credit.
But still, I mean, the guy was in good shape.
Yeah, no. So yeah, he is in this, and we'll get into his character in a little bit. Okay, a couple more. Richard Dysart plays Dr. Nielsen. You know him from The Thing. If you ever watch The Thing, I bring this up every time because I didn't notice it until a couple years ago. He played Doc Copper in The Thing. If you watch The Thing, he's got a nose ring. It's fucking weird. I think the first time I watched it on Blu-ray, where it was like a little crisper than DVD, I'm like, what is going on with this like 65-year-old doctor's face? And then I'm like, he has a fucking nose ring, and I still can't wrap my head around why. And ever since that viewing, which was probably 4 viewings ago, every time I watch The Thing and he's on the screen, I don't even know if I'm paying attention to the story because I'm like, why does a 60-year-old guy have a fucking nose ring?
Is the first time you really noticed it when we talked about it for my pick? Right?
Yes.
Before I was even part of the pint.
Yep. And I watch that movie probably every year. So I've seen it every year since then. That was probably 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just can't get past it. It's so fucking weird. He was also in Back to the Future Part 3, and amongst other things. Now here's a guy that everybody knows from the 80s. G.W. Bailey plays Schmidt. And he was in 4 of the Police Academy movies. He alternated with another actor as like the heavy of those films. He always ended up in the gay bar, the Blue Oyster, and I think in the 4th one where they went to Miami Beach, he ends up getting Dork suntan lotioned into his chest.
That's right.
It's hilarious. He was also in Runaway, which we did last year. The Tom Selleck, Gene Simmons.
Oh, he was in that. Oh,
yeah. He was the captain. He had like 4 lines. Rick Rossovich plays Bob. Rick Rossovich is probably best known to everybody in the world as Slider in Top Gun. And he's also Matt from The Terminator. He is, Linda Hamilton, Sarah Connor's roommate's boyfriend that gets killed by the Terminator. And he has the great line when Schwarzenegger shows up to the apartment. He goes, "I'm going to jack you up, man," or something like that. I'm sorry. "I'm going to bust you up real good," is what he says. And then he gets thrown through a fucking wall. And then the last one I put in here, just because I recognized him, he was much younger and skinnier. Keith Sharabaka played Tippett. He's the guy in the movie that the lab white coat that starts to torture Kathleen Quinlan and then gets shot by the rescue team. He was he's character
sort
actor.
of recognized him. Sorry.
Character actor. I know him mostly because he was the main villain in season 3 of Angel, and he is also one of the cops in The Dark Knight. At the very end of The Dark Knight, when the Joker turns himself in, there's a scene where the Joker is talking to him about he had just killed a cop, and he's like, "Do you want to hear how I did it?" And he begged for his life. He's like taunting him, and then the guy takes like his rings off and stuff, and he's got to attack the Joker. So yeah, Keith Sharabaka. I just recognized him. I'm like, I know this guy, so I stopped it, looked at my phone again. All right, Manster, give us the idea. What's going on? How does this film start?
Well, I will tell you, I'll do a bumper sticker for you because I have one.
All right.
Basically, this is a serious contamination incident occurs within this, I'm going to say, agricultural with quotation marks around it.
Yeah.
/ biological weapons research center. And it turns several careless and stupid scientists into raging maniacs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So we start off this regular day at this regular seeming laboratory, and everybody's going about their day doing their business. Joni is the security officer in charge. Dr. Nielsen is mixing up blood and serum and whatever he's doing. It's not blood. There's supposed to be
some serum.
Yeah, agriculturists that are trying to grow like mega strains of food.
Exactly.
Spoiler alert: they're not.
They're not.
Okay, there's an ulterior motive going on here, and the first scene is Richard Dysart's character, fucking around with those spinning things, and there's beakers everywhere. And in a careless accident, one of the beakers gets stuck to his sleeve, and he's walking around unknowingly with this beaker, the sealed tube stuck to his sleeve, and we all know what's going to happen.
Doesn't it fall on the floor?
It falls on the floor, and then like it reminded me of the scene in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom when the antidote Indy needs falls on the floor and starts getting kicked around everywhere, because that's what kind of happens here. It falls on the floor. It ends up sliding. Someone kicks it, but finally someone steps on it and crushes it. Right around the same time that someone crushes it, for some unknown reason, they're all proud of themselves. They decide to take a group photo, right, Lloyd?
With a test tube.
With a test tube.
Here, hold up that test tube like it's a tiny little bunny, right? It's like a little baby bunny.
Yeah.
And by the way, since we're all in biohazard suits and we have clear face masks on, let's lift them up. Let's just all lift them up.
Yeah, they make it a big point in this movie that they're, even though it's supposed to be agricultural, that they all know the rules and all this stuff. Then it's like, oh, let's take a group picture. Take your helmets off. They all take their helmets off, and of course we know this isn't good because they're in the room with the spilled shit. Now, meanwhile, we meet the sheriff, Sam Waterson. He's chilling in his Bronco or whatever. He's eating Popeyes, and he's just calling up Joni, his wife, and saying, "Hey, what's going on?" As he's talking to her, she gets like these alarms that go off, like at her station. And this is where, for a little bit, it becomes Protocol the movie, because she has to go into a safe and pull out a file and find out what she has to do. And even though, like, Schmidt, the guy who is in charge of kind of like, he seems like the manager of the place, is telling her it's no big deal. It's probably just a broken pump.
Yeah.
She has
W. Bailey.
Yeah. It's her duty, right? To fucking do what it says to do.
Of course. This is protocol. These are procedures that are supposed to happen when you have a biohazard spill.
Right.
It doesn't even make sense to me that you wouldn't follow them.
Yeah, and these people all work there. Now, they don't all seem to be in on what's really happening there, right? But they all work there, and they all know that even what they're dealing with is dangerous to a degree. Right. So she ends up hitting the buttons and flicking the switches, and what happens, Manster?
What's his name there? Who you just said? G.W. Bailey.
G.W. Bailey, yeah, Schmidt.
Schmidt. Yeah, he decides, they want to get out. They're like, hey, let us out. She's like, no, I've got to follow protocol. I'm not going to do that. They're like trying to pound down the door. So then he decides to take matters into his own hand and go down, the narrow corridor and try and find out what the problem is. And lo and behold, he comes across a pump that's turned off. Well, guess what, idiot? If you got fucking biohazard materials out, your pumps are shutting down. So they're not distributing anyway. He's like, oh, the pump's turned off. Let's turn the pump back on. And then goes back to her and says, hey, problem solved. Let us in now.
Yeah, and he actually probably just made it worse, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
The pump is circulating all this air everywhere with this biohazard material. So everything's locked down. Bob, Rick Rossovich, Slider's girlfriend, gets out. A couple people get out, and in hilarious fashion, when the biohazard people come, when the response team comes, Major Connolly and Yafet Koto,
the United States Accident Containment Team.
Is that what they were?
Yeah,
yeah. When they show up, they quarantine these people, but not by like taking them and putting them like in a cell somewhere or in a cage somewhere. They put them in individual, like fucking bubbles.
So,
yeah.
All right. So if you're picturing out there a bubble, like you might see these kind of things on a beach, or if you take your kids to like a trampoline place, they have these bubbles they get in and roll around. No, this bubble is shaped sort of human. It's got legs.
Yeah.
and then it's got this big round goat. I mean, they literally look like these, I don't know, anime freaking weird characters walking around.
I can't think of the character's name. There's an X-Men character. I think it's Herman the Glob.
Yeah.
That's a glob of like slime. And then on the inside, you see his bones.
Yeah.
And
I know what you mean.
That's exactly what this felt like. These people are in these like with arms and stuff. And they're telling them, you got to stay in there for like 3 days.
And they don't know they're getting put in. They get shoved in and then zipped up.
Just like, yeah. The other weird thing I thought that was weird was, especially with the world having just gone through a pandemic, was like when the people grabbed her and put her in the bubble. Did you notice something in particular that they didn't have?
What's that?
They weren't wearing masks or anything. Like,
no.
Unless they know that this isn't like, spread that way, but it seems like it is.
It must have been because it was airborne.
Right.
Because it went from the floor to they breathed it in. So.
Yeah. The guy that puts her in the bubble is just like, he's got a hazmat suit on with the hood down. He's just as dumb as the people that took the helmets off to take the fucking picture. So anyways, now all of a sudden everybody in the town shows up and they're mad. They're this fucking hillbilly kind of like fucking let our people out. And,
It was so bad. But Yafet Koto,
exactly,
he really fucking took that situation. He made it seem like he said, oh, they're developing a strain of yeast and something happened and we need to contain it because, it's going to get in your lungs and that's not going to be good.
Not good for anybody. So as the Cal character, the sheriff, is talking to Joni, he remembers that there was a doctor, Dr. Dan Fairchild, that used to work there, but he's gone. He doesn't work there anymore. And he's the town drunk and everything. So, but he's going to go to him to get answers as to what's going on. So that's what he does. He goes to Fairchild's house, finds Fairchild sleeping half naked in his bed. He wakes him up and says, hey, look, something has happened down in the old biotech and and my wife is there. I need to kind of pick your brain. And Fairchild, right? He knows right off the bat. He knows what they've been doing there. And he was working on something very specific. What were they doing there, Manster? And what was he in charge of?
So they were developing a chemical warfare, like biological weapons. And, of course, it was never out in the open like that. But this guy was smart enough to know that's what the situation was. And he wanted out. And, he just liked working in his lab and developing, the latest strain of zucchini so he could make these really great zucchini pancakes.
Zucchini pancakes. But when he worked there, he was the guy in charge of the antidote or whatever you would call it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yafet Koto makes it pretty clear that, like, in the Geneva Convention, there aren't supposed to be biological warfare, but, the rules of war are stupid because there shouldn't be rules of war. It's like an oxymoron. So his thing was we're making our response if the Russians do it to us first, because if the Russians hit us with a chemical or biological, warfare, we don't want to nuke them, but we want to do something that like fucking can be very similar. And also we can say never happened. So that's what's really happening in this facility. So now Dan Fairchild has teamed up with Cal, and they go back to the site.
To biotech.
To biotech. Did you?
Oh, by the way,
yeah.
I don't want to hijack this, but
no, go ahead.
I'm looking at this biotech. I'm like, damn, that sounds like a great name for a company these days. I think they were being clever because they didn't use the TECH. So there are. Listen to this. Right now, there's companies called Biotech, U.S. Biotech Laboratories, Agilient Biotech, The Biotech, Biotech Restaurantware, Omega Biotech, Biotech Remedis, and Biotech Services. And I just stopped looking after that.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I did read in the little bit of trivia I read on this thing is that they did the spelling on purpose because they knew that there had to be at least 10 fucking biotechs back then too. Like,
yeah, right.
It was
spelled
just,
the right way.
yeah, it'd be like if they, if they're making a movie about a restaurant, they would be like, we're gonna call it McDonald's, but with a K, MK Donald's. Yeah. So, did you find it really weird when Cal? I know Cal's the sheriff, so he's got some authority. But when Cal and Fairchild go back to biotech, how easy it was for them to ingratiate with Yaphet Kotto and his people. Like, he just lets them do whatever they want, it seems like.
Yeah, he's very friendly, Yaphet Kotto. I mean, I think he's very strict and he knows he's got to get a job done, but he seems very friendly to them.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird, but I don't know. I liked it. I liked the Yaphet character quite a bit.
Yeah, I did too. He's just basically... He's in charge of the shit show. No nonsense, in charge of a shit show. Well, here's where things get like kind of like dicey with what's going on. The cameras inside pick up Dr. Nielsen and his crew, the selfie crew. And they all look like essentially when the cameras pick them up in their lab, it looks like a kindergarten class at noon. They're all on the ground. They look like they're fucking nap time.
It's nap time. Hey, was this before or after the lab animals?
Oh, the lab animals was right at the beginning. That was rough. And I don't know if they would really do it that way.
Would you shoot rats in a cage with a, I don't know, 357 Magnum? I don't know what they shot it with, but
I understood the point was as soon as that happened that they had to kill the lab animals to make sure that couldn't spread. But like then they show the guy pull out like a Ruger or something and he's just blasting. They show him pointing into a cage and blowing away like monkeys and parakeets and shit. Like, that's a little heavy. Like you would think even as terrible as it sounds, and I don't agree with this, but you would think they would just like maybe take the cage and throw it in an incinerator or something.
Yeah, they would have had some sort of procedure for that.
Yeah.
It didn't involve bullets.
Yeah, bullets is a far cry from what they should be doing with this fucking thing.
Just put them in a little space and just remove the air or whatever.
Yeah. So everything's kind of going crazy here. Joni's trying to keep everybody, calm as best she can. There's one whole group that we kind of go back to a couple times. A doctor that like locked himself and his crew into the cafeteria.
Right.
And he will not
actor.
Yeah. He will not open the fucking door for no one. Like, he's like, I'm not breaking this seal. He says that 9 times. Not breaking the seal. This guy was in charge of COVID. We would have all been good.
You're right.
He was not opening that fucking door. But at one point, Schmidt and his crew, which includes Slider and Keith Sharabaka from Angel, they start to get a little loony. And they decide that they're going to do whatever they got to do to get out, which includes torture. Like,
they're pounding on the door. They think they've solved the problem, right? But they weren't affected yet, right? They weren't physically affected that they knew. So they're pounding down the door to Joni, who's just sitting in there in her little room, memorizing the access code that they want. And so they get like those first aid, or not first aid, fuck. What are those axes that you see, to break down doors in case of a fire or whatever.
Right.
And they're breaking down the door to where she is. And, it's basically just like, here's Johnny.
Yeah.
Right. You get that kind of situation. And then one of them, was it Nielsen or was it Bob? Who threw the axe?
Oh, it wasn't Nielsen. I think it might have been Bob. Yeah. Fucking threw the axe. Yeah. Across the room.
Throws the axe right at her head. Like, these people are not affected yet. They're not maniacs yet.
And they've also,
maniacs.
this situation is probably in the movie only like 25 minutes in.
Yeah.
So like, it's not like this has been like, we've been in this building for 4 days before they start eating people. These people are willing to kill.
This is like 20 minutes in.
Right. 20 minutes in, they're like, we're going to kill her, you know?
So they break through the door. They throw an axe and it lands in the wall right next to her head. They tackle her. And it looks like they start like ripping her blouse apart. And then he takes a couple of wires, some live wires, and just starts hitting her right in the chest.
Yeah.
With some live wires, electrocuting her. She's like, I'm not going to tell you the code. And then she actually burns it, right? She burns the paper the code was written on. But finally, when she realizes, I'm actually going to get killed if I don't tell him the code, she tells him the code.
Which is no good anymore.
And what happens? No, it doesn't work.
Yeah, because as soon as Yaphet Kotto and his boys showed up, you know, nobody is going to be easily getting out of this building. This is not a corn emergency. This is bigger than a corn emergency. So that's happening. We then go back to nap time, which we think Nielsen and all his people are dead, and they're gone.
They're gone.
They're gone. So, and then we see like in the video, we kind of see one of them walking. So now we're in Zombie Town, right? Like it seems like we're probably in Zombie Town. By the way, I want to point out the all-star of the Nielsen crew was crazy ass Kapoor, right?
Kapoor.
The Indian guy who I think during the photo taking didn't want to take his helmet off, right?
Yeah.
Well, he did, and now he's like their Terminator. Like he is the badass of this crew, because this is the crew that are essentially the living dead. Maybe, I mean,
yeah. I've actually got a comparison. We'll talk about it a little later, maybe during my rating. Yeah.
Okay, they're on the move. And now Yaphet Kotto has sent in a crew of hazmat-suited M16 toting motherfuckers to go take care of business. And the first thing they do is they save Joni as she's being fucking electrified by these nut jobs. The Tippett character, Keith Sharabaka, you know, he wants to get out the door and he goes up to these guys all ready to blast. And he goes, "Get out of my way, boy." And this kid fucking kills him.
Yeah, he blows him away.
Away.
That's around the time where the Schmidt character, who started this whole freaking revolution, this whole coup, right? He started it, really.
Yeah.
But he sees what Tippett's doing. And he's like, "Whoa, you're getting a little out of control now."
Yeah. Joni jumps up on her desk and like basically in like a sitting position, puts herself like in the fetal position.
Oh, it was a thing to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it was sad. And he realizes it because he doesn't want to hurt her. He just wants to get out. Now, Manster, when we start to see how they're looking for who's infected, I thought this was a cool effect. How do we know who's infected?
They take, was it a UV light?
Yeah, like a black light or a UV light?
Yeah, like a UV or black light, some portable light, and they just kind of like shine it over the people's face. And if it's very early infection, you just see some speckles, you know, like some bright green looking speckles under the light around the corners of their mouth and around like their eyes and stuff like that. Some of them have more. Some of them, as it develops, they get like pustules on their face. But the coolest one that I saw was it Schmidt with
the eyes?
Yeah, I guess it's a point later in the movie, but he has contacts. He didn't take his contacts out, and they show somebody else, I guess, taking their contacts out at some point.
No, it's him.
Or was it him putting them in?
I think he's putting them in, but he didn't put them in where he should have put them in. Because as he gets out of the biohazard suit in the beginning, he leans over and you can't tell, either puts in or takes out contacts, but it must be putting them in.
Right.
He infected himself because they had just taken the pictures. The contacts had the shit on them.
Yeah.
So yeah, when he
and they were glowing really cool green, and his eyes looked funky. It was a pretty cool scene.
It was super cool. As we move through this, our hero Sam Waterston, he decides that him and Dan Fairchild are going to go into the building. They make it a point. I thought this was just weird. They make it a point to tell us that Sam Waterston's character had polio at one point, and then it like never plays again. That's
totally in my notes because they call him a gimp. Early on, that character who's a little crazy on the outside wanting to get his son out, he's the one with the 357 Magnum trying to shoot down steel doors with a gun. I didn't understand that, but
no one does.
yeah, he calls him a gimp, and you do see some sort of device
A
on
brace.
his cowboy boot, a brace on his boot, one of his boots, and he steps on his foot pretty hard. They never go anywhere with it.
Fairchild looks at him at one point and says, "You've got a limp. Why do you have a limp?" And he says, "I had polio as a kid." And that's like 25 to 30 minutes into the movie. And in my head right there, I said, something about his blood is going to be a cure, or the word polio is going to make them think of something, and then nothing happens with it.
From that. Nothing at all.
It's fine to have a character that has like a trait like that, but like when you actually take time to point it out a few times and then nothing happens with it, I thought that was really fucking bizarre.
No, they didn't follow Chekhov's rule.
Yeah.
So
yeah, really. His polio,
bring it back at some point.
His polio is the gun in the room.
Right.
So they go inside at one point and they start to try to figure out how to get Joni out. This is happening concurrently while Nielsen and his killer crew are going nuts inside, just attacking people. They're all what's the word? They're clear thought, right? Like they can speak. They're not like dead zombies,
right?
But it's what's the word?
They have their mental faculties.
They have their faculties, but you said a word. What's the word?
Mental faculties?
No.
Rage?
No.
Oh, rage.
Rage. Yeah. And I know where you're going with this because I thought of it too. The comparison you were talking about before. Like,
yeah, go ahead.
28 Days Later, right?
Yeah, that's definitely one.
I think besides John Amato, the only other person that's ever seen this movie in the world is maybe Danny Boyle and Alex Garland, who made 28 Days Later, because essentially this movie is about a rage virus. And we find out from Yaphet Kotto that that's what it is. It's a specifically to fuck with the rage centers of your brain. Now, what I don't understand about that plan is that these guys are fucking mega tough. And like, I wouldn't douse my enemies with that shit.
No.
I get the idea is that you're making them so they can't think, but they're doing a pretty good job of thinking. They're doing a pretty good job of like killing people. I wanted to ask you if you thought this scene was as stupid as I did. I don't remember who it is, but there is a scene where some character comes across Kapoor. Can't remember who it was. And, doesn't shine the UV light on Kapoor's face, but sees Kapoor's face. And at this point, Kapoor is just fucking all pustuled out.
Yeah, he's got all pustules. Yeah.
And the character goes, "Are you sick?"
Yeah.
I wish I had remembered who said that, but it definitely happens. It's so fucking dumb. It was just like, of course he's sick.
Yeah. I mean, there is, as you guys are probably can tell right now, there's a lot of weird and not nonsensical scenes in this movie.
Yeah.
But going back to the rage thing. So I got to thinking during this, could this be the first rage virus movie? Did it all start here? So I did a little bit of research, not a whole lot, but I got it back to, I got two earlier ones. The Omega Man from 1971, which became the Will Smith movie.
Oh, that's I Am Legend, right?
Yeah, I Am Legend. Yeah, it was Omega Man. And The Crazies from 1973, which is also remade. Pretty good movie as well.
The Crazies, yeah, George Romero.
But those were both two sort of virus rage-inducing movies that were earlier than this one.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, so maybe 28 Days Later didn't rip this off. Maybe it ripped off The Crazies.
I did hear, and I didn't go back to check because there's only so much time in my life. I did hear that 28 Days refers to this movie somewhere.
Oh, really?
Somewhere in the movie, there's a reference to Warning Sign. Oh. I don't know what it is or if it's even true. I didn't go back and watch 28 Days Later just to see that. But yeah, that's what I heard.
All right. I'll check it out and see it because I love that movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. All right. So this is all kind of happening now. Everything's kind of going amok inside this place. We'll kind of speed through to the end of it. Manster, how do they finally kind of determine how they're going to take care of everything? They discover that there is a antidote that obviously Fairchild worked on that is inside the facility. Joni is now helping Schmidt, who is mortally wounded, but they realize that the antidote by itself doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So now you go from Protocol 1 and the USACT, USACT team activates now Protocol 2, which is to leave all employees to await the deadly effects of the biological weapon and then sanitize the location afterwards.
Right.
So I was actually quite impressed, maybe, that the first phase was to try to save the people, because all these kind of movies, every other movie ever made, wasn't about ever saving anybody. It was just about burning it down to the ground.
I think it might have been about saving them, but I also think it might have been about, like, more or less saving them alive to see what the effects are. Almost
that could be too.
Almost more like a let's see what happened here. Maybe not so much like let's get them better so they can go home next week and watch fucking Larry's favorite show, Little House on the Prairie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you catch? There was I guess a little scene where they kind of discussed what started the virus, the dead horses.
Yeah, a couple of horses that like killed each other, right?
Yeah, they attacked each other, and I guess they had a virus that just produced the violence or whatever. So.
That's a great album title, Produce the Violence.
Yeah, Produce the Violence.
All right. So Fairchild quickly surmises why Joni is the only one not getting sick. Because I'm wondering this the whole movie. And I actually said the same thing to my head. It's because of the magic of Sam Waterson's cock. He got her pregnant.
That's got to be it. Yeah.
That's it. So it is true. I was thinking she's going to be pregnant. That's going to be the twist to this, why she's not getting sick, and it was. She's got extra.
Good call.
What do they call it? Estrogen and progesterone.
Oh yeah, I didn't write those down, but yeah, there was 3 parts to it. There was the estrogen part, the progenerative part, and then the thorazine part.
Right. So that's what's been keeping her from getting sick. So they determined that's what's going to make a good a man-made antidote. So they take like 2 parts of the antidote, thorazine, which the thorazine is just to keep you docile while it happens. And then another part they're going to mix together. There's a great scene in this part, I think, where it's the only time in movie history I've ever seen Sam Waterston, jerry rig a flamethrower and burn a couple guys to death with it.
Oh, that was a good jerry rig. I loved it.
Pretty good. I like that. But at one point we realize, pardon me, at one point we realize that, Dr. Dan, is sick.
Oh, yeah. His hazard suit is ripped.
It got ripped during one of the struggles.
Yeah.
So they tie him down and they basically say, okay, we're going to, tie you down and figure this out. And this is where, before he passes out, he types into a computer how to do it.
Right. He's like strapped to a chair or strapped to a desk or something so he can't hurt them.
He can't, right? They tie him down so that he can't go nuts and hurt them. But the threat is still real. Dr. Nielsen and his crazy ass crew are coming. I do want to point out, I want to give G.W. Bailey some props before his character Schmidt gets killed. He takes out the Omega Kapoor. He breaks his fucking neck. He jumps on his back and twists his fucking neck before he dies. Right. So we get rid of Kapoor that way. So as the movie is about to end, we have what I liked it, but I also felt it was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in a movie, is where they make the batch of the antidote and now they can save everybody. But the way they have to do it is they load up a bunch of these like, what do you call those? Hypospray guns, the needle guns. Yeah. And they just have to go and just hit as many people as they can. And it's just
a pretty cool scene.
It was cool, but it was kind of ridiculous. Like how they're trying, cause they have to get in close. So they're just, they're just going up to some of these. Yeah.
I got a question for you. Did you see on Netflix the Glass Onion movie?
No, I hated Knives Out. I don't want to say I hated it. I was super disappointed in Knives Out.
I know
I didn't bother.
Yeah.
Didn't bother Glass Onion.
I thought it was pretty good, but it was like during COVID.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in there where this guy shows up and everybody that's invited over to the Glass Onion, they were all shot in the mouth with a spray gun, which was supposed to just totally kill COVID.
Oh, really?
But this reminded me of that because I had just recently watched Glass Onion.
They just inoculate the fuck out of everybody.
They're not even zombies. I don't know what you would call them. Just rage maniacs.
Rage maniacs. And eventually it kind of all ends. And even Cal ends up being sick, but Fairchild inoculates him. Right. Dr. Nielsen.
It's Fairchild. So when, like you said before, he enters in the screen and And then Cal sees that, Cal and Joni, right? They see that, and so then they make the concoction with 2 parts this and 1 part this and all that, and they give it to Fairchild, and they revive him.
Right. They revive Fairchild.
He does come back, so proving that it works.
Right. And then he also revives Cal, who we find out at the very end has gotten it too. Nielsen, the head of the crazies, kills himself. Like, he doesn't get the hypo spray, and he thinks of this as like a failure of his. He says something like that. Yeah. Gets a gun and blows his head off.
Yep.
At the end of this movie, when the doors finally open to the place, you know, it's kind of sad because, you know, like the woman in the bag, in the person bag, she's been waiting for Slider to come out the whole time, and he comes out in a body bag, and his father, who was the douchebag that was fucking around with the sheriff earlier, is sad. Everybody's sad. There's no cleanup. Yaphet Kotto and his people get in their vans and just fucking leave.
Right.
The movie ends almost like a sitcom because Yaphet Kotto and his people leave. And then the last bit of this movie, which you got to figure this is the last couple hours of these people's lives. You know, a lot of their friends are dead now, is Dr. Fairchild saying to Cal and Joni, you know, let's go back to my place for some of those zucchini pancakes.
Zucchini pancakes. and then some corn. Let's have some pancakes and corn.
Pancakes and corn. You're going to have the best breakfast you ever had. Zucchini, pancakes, and corn. Like, literally, if they had just made a noise at the end that just went, ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba, it would have fit in.
Yeah. Cal also nails up that do not enter building condemned sign, which you're going to enter. Kids are going to enter if they see that.
But we never got warning sign 2, so.
And that's it. Yeah, that's the movie.
All right, let's talk about the box office, or what I will describe as, before we get into it, the pretty much non-existent box office of Warning Sign.
So I'm talking about fractions of a penny here, and over time, they add up to a lot.
So Warning Sign, I don't have a budget for it, but it made $1.9 million gross total. It didn't even show up in like the top 150 of 1985, but
not on the list.
Not on the list, but I'll read off the top 5 of the weekend, which was August 25th of 85. Number 5, I had to look it up. I've heard of it, but I couldn't remember who was in it. A Mickey Rourke film. Out for 2 weeks, $2.9 million, Year of the Dragon. Number 4, Tom Hanks and John Candy, but not Splash. The other one they made together, Volunteers. Also out for 2 weeks, $3.6 million. Number 3, one of my favorite movies of all time. I watched it a few months ago for the first time in a while. 5-star movie. I love it. Out for 3 weeks, $4.0 million. Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, you love that.
I love it. 2, Michael J. Fox starring Teen Wolf, one of Scary Larry's favorite films.
Yeah.
It opened that week, $6.1 million. But every time we do 85, do you know what it could not beat, Manster?
85, was it Back to the Future?
It could not beat Back to the Future, which made $6.9 million in its 8th fucking week.
Wow.
Yeah. That movie just fucking, every time we do 85, Back to the Future. It was the number 1 movie of that year, too, by the way.
Every week of that year, too.
Yeah, it came out in May, and somehow it beat movies that came out in like February.
Yeah, it did.
It actually went back in time and defeated films that were 4 months prior. All right, let's rate this thing.
Yeah.
That guy who spent 6 weeks in the bathroom got a 91.
Now, before we get into our rating, as I said before, Scary Larry was supposed to be on this episode. It was back and forth. He was going to do it. He couldn't do it. And then finally he said, I think I could do it, so I'm going to watch the movie. Couldn't do it, but he gave me his rating. So here's Scary Larry's rating on this one. Let me just find it here. All right, here we go. Behind Warning Sign, there's a good idea that could have been a decent movie. It just gets loaded and muddled, an ineffectual story that really leads nowhere and accomplishes nada. As much as I love me some Yaphet Kotto and get a chubby from Kathleen Quinlan.
Oh, yeah.
Not even they can save this mess. I'm warning everyone not to watch it. 1.25 stars on the strength of Lieutenant Harris's performance.
Wow.
Yeah, so Larry was not a fan. Throw this out there to Johnny Amato, though. Remember, when we did Over the Edge, he loved that one. So you're in the Larry category, you're 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Let's see how you fared on your pick of Warning Sign with the Manster. And as I always say, just for the listeners out there, 0 to 5, 0 the worst thing ever, 5 the best thing ever, quarter and half scale optional. Manster, what do you give 1985's warning sign?
Warning sign. A couple of my notes I just want to read off before I do that. Joni has got to be the nicest, most caring character in a movie ever. She's still trying to help these people after they tried to freaking electrocute her and throw an axe at her head.
Yeah,
She's
agree.
amazing. Totally amazing. I wrote one here. I wrote a note. I think you will understand it right away. I just wrote hashtag 80s computer.
Oh, 100%. 100. We talk about 80s computer all the time. If you're not familiar with it, it's those computers in movies in the 80s, The Thing, Alien, that you could just type anything into and it will answer it somehow, which that's not how computers work. There is, yeah, you're right. 80s computer does exist in this film. And I sure recognize that too. Yeah.
That should be a whole genre of movie. And the final thing is, I really expected William Atherton to just sort of show up and be a prick.
Yeah. I agree. I understand that.
All right. So to my rating, I totally feel Larry's, and a lot of my notes are my rating notes are very similar. Like I was saying before, this movie kind of merges this socially conscious technological disaster movie with like a mad scientist light movie. It's not really heavy on either side. It's just sort of weak. But it has been compared to China Syndrome on the outside of the building and Night of the Living Dead on the inside of the building. I don't think this movie is at all clever enough to be compared to either of those movies, but that's what I read a lot of. Like Larry said, it fails to deliver anything new or memorable or unique. Like I said earlier, I think the one thing that I kind of was happy about was that team that came in, their initial response was not to just kill and burn the place down. It was to save the people. You don't see that a whole lot. What could have been, these viral outbreak films, when they're well done, they can be very gripping and horrifying and entertaining. But this is just total mediocrity at its best. That's all it is. Although it is kind of fun to see, Sam Waterston and Damon and Kodo actually do something better than what they had to work with.
Right.
They improved the movie. I'm not going to go as low as Larry. This doesn't even make it to 2.5. But for those reasons, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. And it may seem very low, but I'm going to go to the old Sir John adage. It's a solid 2.
It's a solid 2. Okay.
It's an entertaining 2. It's dumb and funny and corny. Some of their lines are so corny, but they do a good job. So a solid 2 out of 5.
I'm going to go a little higher, but not much. I think I'm going to give this one a 2.25. And I will say it's a solid 2.25. But the problem with this movie for me is that it should have just leaned in one direction or the other. So we have what is the basis for a very solid, just Contagion movie, where the danger is just people against people, right? We see that in the whole scene with Joni where they fucking torture her.
Yeah.
But then it becomes a zombie film. You know what I mean? But it doesn't go balls to the wall with the zombie film.
A lame zombie film.
It doesn't go far enough with the zombie film stuff. Towards the end of the movie, as you get to the last 20 minutes, when Cal and Fairchild break in, through that air duct system and everything, we get more of the zombie stuff, but we just don't get enough. I would have rather have seen this be a heavier zombie film or more of a human drama about there is a contagion, people are getting sick and dying, and people are turning on each other. So I would have liked it one way or the other. In either direction. Instead, we kind of met softly at the middle.
Yes.
We got a good cast. Yaphet Kotto. I'm never going to not want to watch something with him in it. I love that guy. Sam Waterston is strong. He's fine, but you feel like he's going to be the lead, and then he kind of disappears for bits of it.
Yeah.
Jeffrey DeMunn's really good. Kathleen Quinlan's really good. Like you said, you care for her character. Some of the effects are cool, like the practical effects of what people look like when they get sick under the UV light, the pustules, that stuff. There's some cool stuff in there, but it just doesn't go hard enough in any direction. So 2.25 is a solid 2.25 is the best I can give this one.
So from 1 1/4 to 2 1/4.
Right.
I don't know if John Amato was expecting a little higher, but we definitely had, we definitely watched this thing.
Yep. John, we appreciate you. Please don't let this be like a breaking point in our candy relationship.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to rate it a 3 if it means, no more candy.
Yeah, John, if there's no more candy, this was a 5-star movie. if it keeps me in Reggie bars and what did he give me at the last show? English snack that was fucking awesome. Monster Mash, I think it's called. They're like Funyuns, but with a pickly taste. So much better than Funyuns. Okay. Yeah. Oh, they're so good. But yeah, that's for you, John. Thank you so much for requesting that. Don't forget, John's a producer of the show. All the Pint Insiders are. If you want to join, if you want to help shape content, if you want to help pick movies, if you want to get some goodies here and there, just go to Patreon/thepint. $2.50 a month or $4 a month, 2 different tiers. The $4 tier gets you some live streams. But either way, you're going to get a ton of extra content.
You can't go wrong.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't want to shine my own, apple, but I don't think you can go wrong. Manster, where can everybody out? Oh, real quick, I'll throw this out there so you don't say it. We're not on Twitter anymore. I dropped us off of Twitter. I didn't do much with it, and it was kind of useless to me. It kind of became, not that I went on a lot, but just more of a, why is this on my phone anymore? So when you do that, Manster,
I saw your Twitter about dropping Twitter.
Twittered about dropping Twitter. We're done there.
Cool. You can find us on any of your podcatchers. Just search. We're there. If you can, go ahead and give us a 5-star review. We would love that. We got a YouTube channel too. It'd be The Pint: a pop culture podcast. Facebook and YouTube. And on Instagram, but not Twitter, it's at The Pint Podcast. And John already said all the Patreon stuff. All I got to say now is everyone come on over to my place. We're having zucchini pancakes and corn.
I'll be there in 15 minutes.
All right.
See ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over. Nothing is over. Nothing. You just don't turn it off.